The corridors of the starship Perseverance gleamed under the cold light of its ceiling panels. Officers strode past one another with the precision of a clockwork machine, their crisp uniforms a testament to duty and hierarchy. Yet in the corners of every hallway, a solitary figure moved quietly, pushing a mop through the sterile floors. His name was Elior Kane, the human janitor aboard the ship, and to everyone he was invisible. No one knew where Elior came from. Some whispered he was a relic of the old Earth fleets, a forgotten volunteer seeking adventure. Others said he was there by chance, a background presence with no rank or title. In the eyes of the officers, he was nothing more than a silent nuisance, a shadow that left no mark. Elior did not mind. Silence suited him. Being overlooked had always been his strength. It allowed him to see, to hear, and to understand things the crew never noticed. Every sweep of his mop, every adjustment of a flickering light he performed with care, as if the ship itself depended on him. And in truth, perhaps it did. That morning, something felt different. Officers whispered in corners, their usual confidence replaced with tension. Orders were hurried, voices were clipped. Something was approaching, something that made even the proudest admirals uneasy. Elior followed the murmurs to the briefing room. Inside, Admiral Thorne, a tall, rigid man with piercing eyes, addressed the senior officers. His voice, firm and commanding, resonated across the room. Elior lingered by the doorway unseen, listening. "We cannot afford mistakes," the Admiral said. "The alien fleet at the edge of the Epsilon Quadrant is unlike anything we've faced. One misstep could destroy this sector." Pale-faced officers nodded, trying to hide their fear. Elior noticed. Even masked, panic had a sound, a rhythm, a telltale quiver beneath measured speech. After the meeting, the officers filed out, leaving the Admiral alone. Elior approached cautiously, mop dragging softly behind him. He watched the Admiral, noting the lines of worry etched into Thorne's sharp features. Pride weighed heavily on the man, almost as much as responsibility. "You know," Elior said, voice soft yet clear, "sometimes pride is heavier than the ship itself." Thorne stiffened. "Who's there?" he demanded, eyes narrowing. "It's just me," Elior said, stepping into the light. Overalls stained from work, mop in hand, he looked unremarkable. Yet his calm eyes held something the Admiral had not encountered in years. Clarity. "I've been listening," Elior continued, "to everything. The fear, the plans, the mistakes you refuse to admit." Thorne straightened, chest tight. "You are nothing. A janitor. You have no authority here." Elior smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but I have something you don't. Perspective. And perspective," he leaned closer, "can be dangerous if ignored." Thorne's jaw tightened. "Explain yourself." "I've seen ships like this fail," Elior said. "I've seen pride sink the strongest fleets. And I've seen humans rise, desperate enough to fight back when ignored. Don't test me, Admiral. Humans do extraordinary things when pushed." For the first time, Thorne was silent. Elior backed away slowly, mop in hand, his words lingering in the cold air. And in that silence, everything began to change. The first seeds of doubt had been planted. The starship Perseverance moved like a living organism through the black void of space. In its heart, humans and aliens alike scurried through corridors lined with polished metal and glowing panels. Yet among the officers and engineers there lingered a quiet presence. Elior Kane, pushing his mop through the endless hallways, unseen and underestimated. After his confrontation with Admiral Thorne, Elior felt a subtle shift in the ship's atmosphere. It wasn't fear yet. Fear would come later. For now it was curiosity, unease, the prickling awareness that someone small, unimportant, had spoken truth into the fortress of command. He moved through the lower decks, where maintenance crews worked tirelessly. The engineers, mostly alien, gave him polite nods, accustomed to his quiet diligence. Elior observed everything. The subtle tension in their hands as they repaired circuits, the hurried glances toward the upper decks, the quiet worry in their voices. He understood the language of fear as clearly as he understood the rhythm of a mop across the floor. In the officers' quarters, whispers began to circulate. "Did you hear what the janitor said to the Admiral?" Someone murmured. "Who even listens to a human?" Another officer, a young lieutenant named Mira Solon, frowned. She had always respected Elior's meticulous nature. "Perhaps he sees what we're blind to," she said softly. Have you considered that? But the majority dismissed her caution with chuckles or shrugs. Hierarchy was hierarchy, and humans like Elior were supposed to remain invisible. Yet invisibility had limits. Elior began leaving subtle signs of awareness, small ripples that grew into waves. A misplaced tool here, a recalibrated sensor there. Nothing overt, nothing anyone could immediately trace to him, but enough to make officers second-guess their assumptions. Admiral Thorne noticed the changes first. Reports arrived late or out of sequence. Minor systems glitches appeared in improbable places. His sharp mind, trained to detect threats, sensed the patterns. But the more he searched, the less he found. And the more he ignored it, the more pronounced the disturbances became. Elior had no malice, no desire to harm. He was simply observing, nudging, testing the human element aboard a ship that relied too heavily on pride and protocol. And yet, with every ripple, he saw the seeds of doubt take root in the Admiral's mind. That night, the Perseverance's bridge was alive with tension. Lights dimmed as stars streaked past the viewport, and officers huddled around consoles. Elior's mop clattered faintly as he cleaned the floor nearby, a sound unnoticed by most but sharpened in the mind of those who were uneasy. Thorne's voice cut through the quiet. Why are we seeing these anomalies? He demanded, scanning the data reports. Every system is off by a fraction. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to ruin a mission. Who is responsible? No one answered. No one could. Elior stood at the edge of the bridge, silent. Finally, Mira spoke. Admiral, perhaps. Perhaps someone is pointing out our blind spots. Someone we've overlooked. Thorne's eyes narrowed. You mean, a human? Yes, Mira said. A janitor, he noticed what we didn't. The word hung in the air like a knife. Thorne's pride bristled. Authority, power, and reputation felt threatened, not by a rival officer, but by someone he had always dismissed. Elior stepped forward then, slow, deliberate. Admiral, he said, voice calm and measured, I am not your enemy. I simply do not tolerate negligence. I will do what is necessary to protect this ship. And everyone on it. That includes you. The Admiral's chest rose and fell rapidly. The bridge, once a place of order, felt suddenly fragile, vulnerable to the quiet threat of a man no one respected. And in that fragile space, Elior's presence grew larger than his body, larger than any rank or title. A silence settled, thick and palpable, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. Officers glanced at one another, uncertainty replacing confidence. The hierarchy that had seemed unshakable now trembled, and Elior, human and unseen, smiled faintly to himself. For the first time, the people of the Perseverance realized that underestimating someone, especially a human, was a mistake that could cost them more than pride. The ripple had become a wave, and the wave was just beginning. Days passed aboard the starship Perseverance, and the atmosphere had shifted from quiet efficiency to taut vigilance. Officers walked with measured steps, eyes flicking to corners and shadows, their minds unsteady under the subtle disruptions that Elior Kane had orchestrated. The human janitor moved with the same calm precision he always had, but now every step, every sweep of his mop, carried purpose beyond cleanliness. He was no longer invisible. The bridge officers whispered about him behind closed doors, some with amusement, others with unease. A small quiet ripple had become a river threatening to carve through the bedrock of the ship's hierarchy. Admiral Thorne paced the bridge one evening, the weight of command pressing down on him like an iron fist. Reports of minor anomalies still arrived, each one seemingly random but collectively forming an invisible pattern that gnawed at his pride. He had dismissed Elior before. He had ignored him. But the Admiral was beginning to sense something he could not control. Bring me a full log of all system recalibrations, Thorne demanded, voice sharp, almost shaking. His officers scrambled, fingers dancing over touchpads, data pouring in from every deck. Elior appeared at the edge of the bridge, mop in hand, as if drawn by the tension itself. He didn't speak. He only watched, his calm gaze unsettling in its intensity. Thorne finally turned, the Admiral's face a mixture of anger and fear. What are you doing here? Thorne snapped. Elior's voice was soft, deliberate. I am observing, Admiral. You are human. You lead humans, and humans make mistakes when blinded by pride. The room grew quiet. Officers held their breath. Thorne felt the weight of those words, He had faced alien threats, mutinies, even cosmic storms. Yet the most destabilizing force on his ship was a janitor. "You're meddling," the Admiral growled, stepping closer, fists clenched. "You're overstepping." Elior shook his head gently. "I am protecting. If you fail, this ship fails, and every life aboard it will be lost. I do not intend to fail." Something in Thorne's chest shifted. For the first time, he realized the enormity of underestimating humans. Not just any humans, but those overlooked, ignored, considered insignificant. They had resilience that no protocol could anticipate, courage that no rank could command, and vision that pride often blinded the powerful to see. That night, Elior walked through the engine rooms, speaking softly to the maintenance crew. They were a mix of species, some skeptical, some wary, but all aware of the human who had shaken the Admiral's composure. "Notice everything," he said. "Nothing is too small. Every detail matters. And when it does, act. Protect the ship. Protect each other. Human or not, we are all accountable." The crew, inspired, began to move with renewed purpose. Systems were recalibrated before glitches became problems. Minor errors were caught before escalation. The subtle wave Elior had begun now surged across the ship, energizing even those who had once ignored him. But above it all, Thorne's frustration grew. He could not admit it yet, not to his officers, not even to himself. The Admiral felt the threat of irrelevance, a sensation alien to him. Every glance toward Elior was a reminder that authority was fragile. Pride, he realized bitterly, could be the first thing to betray a leader. One evening, as the Perseverance approached the edge of the Epsilon Quadrant, a warning alert blared. Sensors had detected multiple alien vessels moving into strategic positions. The officers froze. The data was complex, shifting, threatening. Elior entered the bridge, calm in the chaos. "Admiral," he said, his voice carrying across the tense room, "if you hesitate, lives will be lost. You know what to do. Trust yourself. Or trust someone you've ignored." Thorne's jaw clenched. Pride fought with survival instincts. Fear fought with logic. And in the middle of it all stood Elior Kane, human, small, unassuming, yet more powerful than any officer, any protocol, any weapon. The Admiral swallowed. He knew what the Janitor had done, what Elior was capable of, and in that moment he understood that power was not in titles, not in rank, not in fear. Power was in courage, in vision, in the refusal to be invisible. And the first spark of defiance had been lit. The Perseverance hung at the edge of the Epsilon Quadrant like a solitary sentinel in the void. Stars glittered coldly against the black expanse, and the distant alien fleet shimmered as a shadowy formation, moving with eerie precision. The hum of the ship's engines was steady, almost hypnotic, masking the tension vibrating through the corridors and bridge alike. Admiral Thorne stood rigid on the bridge, eyes flicking between displays, jaw tight. The alien fleet was unlike anything his sensors had cataloged before. Vast, fluid, shifting formations that defied conventional tactics. Panic hovered just below the surface of the senior officers' faces, but Thorne refused to acknowledge it. His mind churned, desperately seeking control, desperately clinging to the authority that had defined his life. Elior Kane moved quietly among the crew, mop resting at his side. He had spent days observing, listening, and subtly nudging the officers to notice errors and blind spots. Now, as the alien vessels approached, every small insight he had gleaned became a lifeline. He approached the Admiral, calm as ever. "Sir?" Elior said softly. "Your fleet relies on precision and hierarchy, but this enemy does not follow our rules. You must allow those who see differently to act." Thorne's eyes flared. "You speak as though you understand command," he barked. "You are a janitor, nothing more." Elior's gaze did not waver. "And yet, the errors you cannot see are my responsibility if ignored. You may have rank, Admiral, but insight belongs to those who observe." The bridge fell silent. Officers, already nervous, now watched the confrontation with wide eyes. Elior was human. He had no authority, and yet in that moment he carried a weight that Thorne could neither challenge nor dismiss. Sensors beeped urgently. Alien vessels were adjusting, preparing to strike. Tactical officers scrambled to execute maneuvers that seemed inadequate against the fluid, adaptive formations. Thorne's pride bristled, but he hesitated, unsure whether his orders could survive the chaos. Elior stepped forward, eyes steady. "Admiral," he said quietly, You can command or you can endanger everyone. Let me show you a possibility your pride has blinded you to. Thorne's hand trembled slightly as he considered the human before him. For the first time he glimpsed the truth. Ignoring someone deemed insignificant could have consequences beyond reckoning. And in Elior Kane, a human overlooked by everyone, lay a spark of ingenuity and fearlessness he could not afford to dismiss. With a curt gesture, Thorne stepped back, granting Elior room. "Do it," he said, voice low but firm, almost a whisper against the hum of the ship. "Show me." Elior moved quickly, coordinating with engineers and junior officers, some of whom had begun to trust his instincts. He adjusted energy flows, rerouted shields to anticipate alien maneuvers, and calculated countermeasures with a precision that left the seasoned officers stunned. Every adjustment was subtle, almost invisible, but collectively they formed a shield of strategy against the overwhelming force of the alien fleet. The first wave of alien ships struck. Beams of energy lanced through space toward the Perseverance, and the bridge shook under the force. Officers gasped, alarms blared, and panic threatened to overwhelm the room. Yet thanks to Elior's interventions, the majority of the attacks were deflected, leaving only minor damage. Thorne stood rooted, witnessing the impossible. A janitor, a human dismissed at every turn, had saved the ship from near annihilation. Pride warred with relief in his chest, but he could not deny what he saw. Elior's calm focus, his understanding of systems and people, had altered the outcome of the battle. The alien fleet recoiled, adjusting tactics to face a ship that had suddenly become unpredictable. Elior, still composed, addressed the crew. "Observe. React. Do not wait for orders that may come too late. Humanity survives when it adapts. So will we." For the first time, officers across the ship felt the power of cooperation over hierarchy, of insight over rigid protocol, and in the corner of the bridge, unnoticed by all but Thorne, Elior allowed a small, satisfied smile. The seed of change had taken root. The Perseverance had faced near disaster and survived, not because of rank or experience, but because one human had dared to be seen when no one expected it. Thorne's pride remained, bruised and battered, but a grudging respect flickered in his eyes. He would not say it aloud, not yet, but he knew that Elior Kane had changed everything, and the war for the Epsilon Quadrant had only just begun. The Perseverance hummed through the darkness of the Epsilon Quadrant, its hull battered but intact. The alien fleet had paused, circling cautiously like predators testing a new prey. Within the ship, a new tension had taken root, one that no alarm or warning could measure. It was the tension of perspective, of authority questioned, of pride and fear locked in a silent struggle. Elior Kane moved through the corridors as he always did, mop in hand, yet now officers turned to watch him, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Even Admiral Thorne, who had once dismissed him entirely, found himself wondering what the human might see next. The lower decks buzzed with whispered conversation. Crew members exchanged reports, debated strategies, and cautiously tried ideas inspired by Elior's previous interventions. Humans and even some aliens were beginning to realize that survival depended not on rank alone, but on insight and courage, the traits Elior embodied. Yet admiration came hand in hand with resentment. Senior officers bristled at the human who, by virtue of being observant and unafraid, had taken a place in decision-making. Lieutenant Varen Solis, tactical officer and lifelong loyalist to Thorne, confronted Elior near the engineering bay. "You're overstepping," Varen spat, voice low but dangerous. "You have no rank here, no authority. You're a janitor. Nothing more." Elior tilted his head slightly, calm as ever. "And yet the ship still functions. The fleet still respects us despite the threats. Authority comes from action, not title. Do not mistake obedience for competence." Varen's eyes narrowed. "You think your observation matters more than our training?" "Not more," Elior replied softly. "Different, complementary. Ignored, it becomes disaster." Varen stormed off, anger etched into his face. Yet Elior's words had planted seeds of doubt even in his mind. If one human, overlooked entirely, could correct errors he had been trained to prevent, what did that say about the assumptions they all lived by? Meanwhile, Admiral Thorne wrestled with his own pride. He could not yet admit that he had needed Elior's insight to save the ship. But he could no longer ignore the truth. Humans like him, the overlooked, underestimated humans, could think and act in ways the highest-ranking officers could not predict. Thorne's fingers drummed against the console, his jaw tight. A grudging respect battled with his stubborn pride. That night, Elior walked the corridors again, noting minor adjustments needed in shield systems, communication relays, and engine flow. He spoke to engineers quietly, guiding, suggesting, correcting. The ship responded, humming with newfound precision. A sudden alarm broke the calm. Alien ships had changed formation, moving faster, testing the Perseverance's shields and firing with accuracy that even the crew had not anticipated. Panic rippled through the bridge. Officers shouted coordinates, tried to anticipate the alien tactics, but the enemy's adaptability was frightening. Elior stepped onto the bridge without hesitation. "Admiral," he said, voice firm yet calm, "we must act now. Follow the instincts of the ship, not just protocol. Trust observation. Trust courage." Thorne's chest rose and fell rapidly. The pride that had restrained him before now clashed with the urgency of survival. He looked at Elior, at the calm in the human's eyes, at the certainty that could not be taught but only earned through awareness and resilience. "Do it," Thorne said finally, voice low and commanding. "Take initiative. Show me your plan." Elior nodded, moving quickly to coordinate shields, redirect energy, and relay instructions to junior officers. Every adjustment, every command was precise yet subtle. It was a dance of strategy, a quiet defiance of convention. The crew followed, hesitant but willing, and the ship began to anticipate the alien attacks instead of merely reacting. For the first time, the officers witnessed the power of human ingenuity, the kind that comes not from rank or privilege, but from observation, understanding, and an unyielding commitment to act when necessary. By dawn, the alien fleet had withdrawn slightly, uncertain and cautious. The Perseverance was battered but intact. Officers looked around, silently acknowledging the hand that had guided them through near disaster. All eyes eventually landed on Elior Kane, mop still in hand, standing quietly in the corner as though he had done nothing extraordinary. Thorne's voice broke the silence. "Janitor," he said, low, almost grudging, "you've changed the course of this battle." Elior merely nodded, serene. "I only acted when others failed to see." A new respect, fragile yet undeniable, began to take hold on the ship. And in that quiet, amidst the hum of engines and the faint smell of polished metal, one truth crystallized. No human should ever be underestimated. The shadows that had hidden Elior were gone. The storm had revealed him. The Perseverance drifted through the dark silence between stars, its engines burning softly like a heartbeat. The battle had left scars, both on the hull and in the hearts of those aboard. Repairs echoed through the ship, metal clanging, sparks flickering. Yet beneath the rhythm of work, another sound pulsed. Unease. Elior Kane had become a name whispered with both admiration and fear. Officers who had once ignored him now greeted him with forced politeness. The maintenance crews treated him like a quiet guardian, but among the senior ranks resentment brewed. A janitor had done what they could not. A human had stepped beyond his place. Admiral Thorne sat in his quarters, the dim light casting long shadows across his desk. Reports flickered on his screen, praising the unorthodox human intervention that saved the ship. Every word was a dagger. His authority, once absolute, now wavered in the shadow of a man who wielded no title at all. The door chimed softly. "Enter," Thorne said curtly. Elior stepped inside, his uniform plain as ever, his expression unreadable. He carried a small maintenance pad and a quiet certainty that made even Thorne shift uneasily. "You wanted to see me, Admiral?" Thorne's voice was sharp, but his tone carried the tremor of restrained emotion. "Yes, I want to understand what you think you're doing. You've disrupted command, overridden protocols, and made officers question their superiors. You've made me look weak." Elior studied him for a long moment before answering. "I didn't make you look weak, Admiral. I showed you what strength looks like when it's not wrapped in pride." Thorne's jaw tightened. "Watch your words, Janitor." "I've been watching, Admiral," Elior said quietly, stepping closer. "Since the day I came aboard, I've watched people fear mistakes more than they fear failure. I've seen your officers ignore problems because they don't want to challenge authority. You built a ship strong enough to face alien fire, but too fragile to face the truth." Thorne rose abruptly, fury flashing across his face. "You forget yourself. You are nothing here. Elior's voice didn't rise, but the calm steel in it cut through the air. And yet nothing is what saved your ship. Nothing is what stood between survival and annihilation. You ignored me as everyone did, and still I protected you. You call me a janitor, fine. But I clean more than floors. I clean mistakes before they destroy everything. The Admiral froze, words failing him. Elior's eyes met his. There was no arrogance in them, only a deep, unshakable conviction. You think command gives you power. But power without awareness is blindness. You can lead fleets and still lose everything if you refuse to see the smallest things that matter. You ignore people like me because you think we don't matter. But Admiral, it's the small things that hold great ships together. Thorne sank slowly back into his chair. The anger in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something raw, realization, even pain. For the first time he saw Elior not as a threat, but as a reflection of everything he had lost: humility, perspective, humanity itself. The silence stretched long and heavy. Finally Thorne spoke, voice low. You risked insubordination. You undermined command. You made me doubt myself. Elior nodded once. Because you needed to. Doubt is not weakness, Admiral. It's the first step to clarity. You've spent so long believing you could not fail that you forgot what it means to truly lead. Thorne stared at him for a long moment, then looked away. You said something before, he murmured. That when ignored, humans do extraordinary things. Elior gave a faint smile. We do, Admiral. 'Cause we have to. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet hum of the ship filled the space between them. Outside the viewport, distant stars burned steadily, as though waiting for the outcome of this small, human confrontation aboard a massive ship lost in the void. Finally, Thorne stood, his voice steadier now. You've made your point, Kane. The crew listens to you. They trust you. And perhaps I should too. Elior inclined his head. Then let's make sure that trust isn't wasted. The aliens are adapting. They'll come again, but this time we'll be ready. Thorne extended his hand, a gesture as rare as humility itself. Then let's see what humanity can truly do. Elior looked at the hand, then took it firmly. We'll show them, Admiral, he said softly. We'll show them what everyone ignored. And for the first time, they stood not as superior and subordinate, but as equals. 2 men, 1 ship, and a battle yet to come. The Perseverance shuddered under the void's black weight. Outside, the alien fleet advanced again, their formations twisting and shifting like living shadows. Their presence was a test, a challenge, a threat that no officer's rank alone could repel. Inside, the ship's corridors hummed with urgency and tension, each heartbeat of machinery a reminder of lives in motion. Elior Kane moved through the ship with deliberate calm, mop in hand as always. Yet his every step now carried the quiet authority of someone the crew had learned to trust. Officers deferred to his observations, engineers followed his suggestions, and even Admiral Thorne, pride tempered by respect, had begun to listen without doubt. The bridge was alive with controlled chaos. Tactical officers shouted coordinates, engineers adjusted power flows, and junior crew members raced to execute orders. But at the center of it all, Elior's presence was magnetic. His calm clarity grounded the storm of fear and indecision that had gripped the ship. Admiral, Elior said softly, voice carrying over the clamor. They're adapting faster than anticipated. We cannot just react. We must predict, anticipate, act before they force us to. Thorne nodded, every muscle in his body coiled with tension. Then we follow your lead, Kane. Every step, every decision, your eyes first. Elior's gaze swept the bridge. He saw hesitation, uncertainty, and the tiniest signs of fatigue in every officer. Focus, he said. Trust your instincts, but trust each other more. This ship is not a collection of ranks. It's a single organism. Every hand, every mind matters. The first alien assault began, a wave of energy lancing toward the Perseverance with deadly precision. Alarms blared, consoles flashed, and the officers' hearts raced. But the ship moved like a single living entity under Elior's guidance. Shields pulsed in synchronized rhythms, engines adjusted imperceptibly, and weapons aligned with uncanny accuracy. Now, Elior shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Officers executed his maneuvers flawlessly. Energy pulses surged, countering the alien beams, redirecting power with precision. The alien fleet faltered, forced to retreat from tactics they could not anticipate. Each strike of the Perseverance carried not the authority of rank, but the intelligence, courage, and ingenuity of humans, the very qualities everyone had ignored for so long. Thorne's hands shook as he gripped the console. He glanced at Elior and realized that the janitor, the man he had dismissed, had orchestrated the ship's survival. Pride and humility collided in his chest. He wanted to speak, to say something monumental, but no words captured the truth. Survival, leadership, courage. It had all come from the human no one had believed in. When the last alien vessels withdrew beyond sensor range, silence fell across the ship. Crew members, exhausted but alive, stared at each other in disbelief. The Perseverance had endured, not because of protocol, not because of rank, not because of technology, but because humans refused to be ignored. Thorne finally broke the silence. "Kane," he said, voice low and steady, "you've done what no officer could. You've reminded us all what it means to be human." Elior nodded, mop resting lightly against the console. "I did what was necessary. We all did. That is what matters." The crew erupted in quiet cheers, laughter, and relief. Respect, once withheld, now flowed freely toward the human who had moved unseen for so long. They had learned that greatness is not always visible, that courage is not measured by title, and that a single human, when seen and acknowledged, could alter the course of history. Thorne stepped closer to Elior. "You've changed everything aboard this ship," he said. "Perhaps even the way humanity will be remembered among the stars." Elior's gaze was steady, serene. "Not remembered," he said softly. "Understood. That is enough." Outside, the stars of the Epsilon Quadrant shimmered, indifferent to human triumph. Yet aboard the Perseverance, a small but profound truth had been etched into the hearts of all who survived. Never underestimate the overlooked. Never ignore courage, and never mistake simplicity for insignificance. Elior Kane, the janitor who had been invisible to everyone, became the symbol of what humanity could achieve: resilience, insight, and the extraordinary power of those who refused to be ignored. And as the ship sailed onward, through darkness and uncertainty, every officer, every crew member, every human aboard the Perseverance understood a simple truth. Greatness often comes from the quietest, humblest corners, and sometimes it mops the floors while saving the galaxy. The Perseverance moved forward, whole again, guided by humanity itself.